Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show with Mike. T-Roy's in the house. What up, T? He just punched himself in the face with his headphones.
A little quick.
Yeah, they kind of got a little snap to them, don't they?
Yeah. I'm trying to play double duty here.
I liked your theme dressing today, Blink TBI.
Thank you. Representing for our special guest.
Yeah, Ryan Fiorini in the house. Dr. Ryan Fiorini. He loves when we call him doctor, but
Love it.
sorry, you were the one that got a fucking PhD.
Understand.
So deal with it.
Although
Fair.
you called him a virologist. Is that technically true? You're an immunologist and a microbiologist?
That's right.
Yes?
Is that what it is? What are your credentials? We should lay that out for people just so they know
When he says stuff, he's not
when he
full of
says
shit.
stuff. Yeah, exactly. That we're talking to someone that actually has a background in some of this stuff.
So my PhD was in immunology, microbiology, and it focused on, sort of virology. It focused on transplant patients that were getting, they're immunocompromised, so they're getting various, hepatitis, and they get sick all the time because they're fighting the organs, and vaccines, that sort of thing. I mean, I made a vaccine. I had a company that made antibodies. We would have been able, had I not sold the company, we would have been able to make COVID antibodies very quickly. Background has always been in immunology and that sort of thing.
So so this kind of falls right into your wheelhouse. Whatever we've gone through over the last, God, it's got to be 2 years now, closing in on getting close to 2 years. This really does fall into what your studies were in, what your PhD is in.
Yep.
So a lot of this you're very familiar with.
Very.
Does it drive you nuts when we just talk like morons about it?
Yep. Or when you miss the bell.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
true.
You've got an OCD about the bell.
Yes.
There's a lot of people that neurose about the bell.
It's a thing.
Yeah. So we'll try our best not to screw that up going forward for you. How wrong are we getting things when we report stuff? Because there's so much reporting. You could literally spend months trying to parse through what UK papers are saying versus American papers, what's going on in Israel, what's going on in Japan. There is so much stuff that I've read, and it's hard to know what you're believing. So what I've done and I've talked about is I tend to go to places, and people love to blow off at Joe Rogan. Well, that's insulting to someone like me, because my job, or Joe Rogan's job, is to get interesting people on and let them be the experts in what they're expert in. And to have a 3-hour discussion about something where you really break it down, and then to just discard that as, oh, Joe Rogan, the MMA commentator, well, yeah, he's not the one dishing the fucking information, asshole.
Right.
The guest is, who is a virologist, who is a, whatever, all the scientist and a doctor or frontline COVID worker. So it really drives me nuts. But I'm trying to, Jimmy Dore has done some incredible reporting with his team. Tim Pool has done some incredible reporting. Glenn Greenwald has done some great reporting. Joe Rogan has done some masterful reporting and interviewing, where he is so good at following up, getting back on point when it goes off the rails.
Yeah.
Really, from an interviewer's perspective, those guys are doing some serious shit. And I don't believe ABC News. I don't care what NBC News has to say, CBS, and I don't know how you feel about it. Feel free to tell me. You guys, Mike, Troy, you guys are so full of shit and off base on this stuff. That's fine. You can say that to me, but I'm trying my best to parse what I can put together as a dumb guy on a microphone. How wrong are we getting things?
You're not wrong on a lot of things except one thing.
What?
It was the comment of giving your child the vaccine.
Child
is
abuse.
Child abuse.
Yeah.
So for background, I think politically, the three of us are on the same page, right? So, I vote Republican 99.9% of the
Yeah,
time.
you're center right, leaning right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And obviously, from my background, I know vaccines work, right? A couple things that I think are not accurate. The vaccine is safe, okay? I don't care what anybody says. It's not going to stop you from having kids in the future. And yes, I can guarantee it. And here's why. Here's why. What's in that vaccine is no different than what's in a flu vaccine or your measles vaccine,
Pneumonia vaccine.
There's nothing different except the piece of mRNA. And the piece of mRNA is gone within seconds when it's injected in your body. Gone.
Really?
Your body will eat it up, and then we'll start making antibodies for it. So everything that's in there, if you've ever gotten, your shots when you were a month old for your MMR, your measles, mumps, rubella, when you got that, it's the same stuff that's in your flu vaccine. So people go, wow, oh my God, how could they do this without testing it? Well, they did test it. They've tested it for 70 years.
Yeah.
It's just the mRNA that didn't. Now, the other thing you guys are absolutely right about. So I was telling Troy before we got on here, I got my booster. I won't be getting another one.
Yeah.
Unless it changes.
They're already talking about a 4th booster today.
I'm done because I can tell you this: you don't lose your antibodies in 6 months. It just doesn't happen.
From the first 2 even?
From the first 2 even. You don't lose them.
Really?
Absolutely not. You might not be as strong a year, 2 years later, but you don't lose something in 6 months. Unfortunately, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I think you have to look at everything. You have to go, Pfizer got $1.2 billion from the government in order to give out boosters. Imagine you're the CEO.
Yeah.
What would you do?
Yeah.
Yeah, you pump it.
Jimmy Dore was reporting on it that they're going to rake in $33.5 billion, Pfizer, in the year 2021.
Yep.
That's astronomical. And for comparison, we talked about it yesterday, but he said the music recording industry as a whole nationwide will generate $12 billion.
Oh my God.
So Pfizer from the vaccine is generating $33.5 billion. When you're dealing with a board of directors, when you're dealing with, I don't even know, R&D development going forward, when you're trying to, do all that stuff, having that kind of money and that kind of influence on politics, when you're that's terrifying. When you have that kind of pull, $33.5 billion a year can buy you media that will support you no matter what the fuck you say.
That's right.
And it will buy, it will buy Washington too.
Buy a lot of votes.
It'll buy a lot of things. And so going back to the children, and the problem I have with it, and maybe you can debunk it, but early reports that we saw said that there was a disproportionate amount, and they held meetings about this on the federal government level about myocarditis in especially young boys. And so there was a 6 times, I don't remember the numbers, this is going back months, but it was like you were 6 times more likely to end up in the hospital with some form of myocarditis versus ending up in the hospital because of COVID, which is why I declared it child abuse. And I know I'm pushing buttons when I say something like that. I'm fucking around.
I know.
And I fucked with my brother. He got Marshall vaccinated. And he actually got mad at me. He was like, dude, stop calling me a fucking shitty parent. I'm like, he's more likely to get hurt from the vaccine than fucking help. The kid's fine. So where am I wrong on that?
When you're talking risk reward.
Yeah.
Really.
So immediately, I totally agree with you that the chance of a child getting COVID and showing symptoms and dying from it is almost zero.
Yeah.
You probably have a better chance of dying driving to the doctor, right?
Right.
That being said, about 20 years ago, we started getting anti-vaxxers. And they said, well, I'm not giving measles, mumps, rubella to my kids.
Is this the Jenny McCarthy,
Yeah.
McCarthy period?
Autism or was that what I was thinking
Yeah.
it was? Yeah.
Because right. And that whole thing, mind you, that doctor is in jail. He came out and said he lied about it, that it doesn't cause autism. He totally lied.
Was he Jenny McCarthy's doctor? Is that who that
He
was?
wasn't.
She took it. and ran
Yeah,
with
she
it.
just took it and ran with it. He was in London and lied about every bit of it and is in jail for it. But what ended up happening was, I don't know, a couple years ago in colleges, rubella was running around
coming back.
killing kids. So your 18-year-old now dies of rubella. That's fucked up, dude.
Yeah.
That's
That's like dying of polio.
like dying of polio.
Yeah.
And that just shouldn't happen. And so
And is that strictly because parents stopped immunizing their children from this stuff for fear of what it was going to do?
correct.
And so it sparked up again.
Correct. Now this vaccine is different than a lot of other vaccines. A lot of other vaccines, when you get measles, for example, it gets in your body and your body kills it almost immediately, and you're not transmittable. This vaccine is very different. You can still get
Talking
it.
about the mRNA technology.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'm just going to say specifically, not for all mRNA. specifically for COVID. You can obviously
still
get
transmit
COVID.
it
Right. You
and
can transmit it. You
contract
can.
it, yeah.
So it's not really a vaccine,
Well, I mean,
technically speaking.
It's building a little immunity.
it's building
in your
immunity,
own body.
but it's just not this herd immunity, which I mean, I am a huge fan of herd immunity. This vaccine does not give you that.
Yeah.
Because you can still get it, you still transmit it.
And those rates are similar. Unvaxxed versus vaxxed people.
That's right.
Getting it and giving and spreading it.
Yes.
And so the problem I have when they're shutting everything down and they're worried about the unvaxxed, you know, when former Vice President Joe Biden is saying this is the unvaccinated, the war on the unvaccinated who are spread, like that is
Pandemic
so
of the unvaccinated.
pandemic of the unvaccinated. And it's like, no, dude, from what everything I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, this gives you personally protection.
That's it.
That's it. It's not
100%.
protecting anybody
It's your
else.
bulletproof vest. That's
You are
what it is.
correct.
You can still get shot in the face and die.
Yep.
But it gives you a level of protection, but it's not going to stop the guy next to you.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's absolutely correct. It's bullshit what they've said.
Yeah.
There is, and I don't post a lot of stuff. You know, you see a lot of fodder coming in from friends and or acquaintances who, talk about how if you don't vaccinate, then get off my friend list. And
Yeah.
I normally stay quiet. I had one recently that went to college with, and I just had to say something because she basically said you were the people that weren't.
Let me
getting
guess.
vaccinated.
Selfish.
Yep.
Yep. Don't care about others.
You're killing people.
killing people.
You're murder.
Yeah.
You're a murderer.
Murderer.
Personally responsible.
I've seen that same list from people that I know that I'm close to,
Mm-hmm.
and it's if you've done any real research on this, that's absurd on its face. Absurd.
And something you guys hit on was, and I read it this morning, is you were hearing about the 74% Omicron versus Delta. And
Yeah.
So the antibody tests, the antigen tests, don't tell you what it is.
I was wondering how that you get that information.
Only if you get a PCR test can you tell what it is. So they admitted today they were assuming the numbers were correct.
Yeah.
And the 74% came down to 20%.
They were off by 50%.
By
Knew it. You
50%.
called that.
So there's
You did.
no way. There's no way.
You called it.
Jumped on that off air.
Yep.
2 days earlier. What? There's no fucking way that in 3 days the numbers can flip to
You're right.
I mean, maybe a
30% to
few weeks, a
90%.
month, whatever. But there was no way. It was just scare tactics.
You were right. Absolutely. And I think
And they've admitted that now. That's what came out is the
Yeah.
CDC is now saying, hey, we were way off about this.
Right.
Well, the problem I have with that is they put a halt to monoclonal antibodies being shipped out around the country. Florida's been bitching their asses off about it because they know how well it works. So is Texas. They basically said these ones that we have, unless you have the GlaxoSmithKline UK one, these ones don't work against Omicron as well, as far as we think. So, okay, by that logic, you stopped the flow of something we have tons of, is very easy to ship out to offices for people to get these monoclonal antibodies when they have it. Well, you stopped that chain. You should have seen this coming in the first place. You knew there was going to be a holiday winter variant. Of course, everybody knew that. But they stopped those monoclonal antibodies, and I don't know why. And now, if it is true that Delta is still the more prevalent one, and that will get lapped in time, to
Eventually,
your point, T,
yeah.
it will get lapped. But right now, my brother's on 7 days now. 7 days. He very well could have gotten Delta. Monoclonals would have helped him tremendously. They're not fucking available anywhere. People are struggling to get these things that should be easily gettable.
So let me at least, I don't know the answer of why they didn't do it, but I can tell you, I told you my first company, we had a technique of making monoclonal antibodies in a way that nobody else could make. It was a way to make them with we used human tonsils. And we would chop them up and put them through this special patented process. And 21 days later, you got antibodies against anything you wanted.
Well,
Like what, for example?
You name it.
you can
COVID,
you can steer it however you
cancers,
want. You can
steer it.
okay.
So what we actually did was we would make a library because there's only a certain number of possibilities. There's 11 billion different combinations of antigens that you can have. So different stuff out there. There's 11 billion different ways. And the thing you don't know about these antibodies, the FDA, nobody really knows, is those can cause a problem. So to their defense, I would say I wouldn't take it without some research. I would want to see it. Now, the vaccine, I would take it with a month of research.
Yeah.
But an antibody, there's plenty of people that are on biologic, Humira, and there's a lot of antibodies out there that people take, and they can be very tough on the body.
Yeah.
And they could bind to something that you didn't expect and it could cause some major problems. So I would definitely say an antibody I would want to see tested. Sure, it could be sped up, but I'm just kind of devil's advocate on their side. Antibodies are amazing. I mean, I made an antibody in my PhD. That was my PhD
A monoclonal
thesis.
antibody?
Made a monoclonal antibody.
Yeah.
And then I had a company that made them.
So have we seen problems globally with monoclonal antibodies being distributed to people? Because I would think the media, who is so focused on pushing vaccine, that's it. That's it.
If there were an issue.
If there was one guy that got sick from monoclonal antibodies, it'd be the biggest story in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
So that would lead me to believe
There's nothing going on.
that there hasn't been a big problem with monoclonals. And I know people were taking, kind of the Joe Rogan thing with vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, monoclonal antibodies, ivermectin, and kind of throwing the kitchen sink at it. Did you have a problem with that?
No. I mean, I haven't looked at the data of the research behind of monoclonals, but if I looked at it, I would probably take it if there was, a 100-person trial. I'd take it.
Really?
Yeah. If 100 people, and one of the things you brought up was in the kids was the.
And have we finished that question, by the way, when I said if the risk is higher of myocarditis, which is inflammation of the heart, if the risk is higher to a toddler or 5-year-old for that than it is actually getting to the hospital or dying of COVID, then why would that argument be bad to go, hey, the lesser of two evils, the world can't all be good and bad. Sometimes it's just bad and worse.
Well, especially if you can still contract it and spread it, even with the vaccine. So what is the benefit of them having it?
I don't believe that. I don't believe what they're saying. I don't believe that there's a 6-time higher rate of myocarditis. I don't believe it.
Well, that was if you, and you'll know more about this, about the injection.
Yeah.
Where you're supposed to pull back, and if you see blood in there, you pull the needle out and throw it away because you may have hit some sort of blood vessel, and that's where you get the myocarditis. It's rare, but that's what they're seeing. I don't know if there's any truth to that, but that was the reports, and nobody did that. What do they call that?
Yeah, I mean, you're not going into a vein, and so they are supposed to pull back, but my God, if they're going in straight, so you're going to go through the vein, or you're not going to get much in there. And mind you, it all goes straight into your vein when it goes into your muscle. It then goes into your veins. So here's a kind of anecdotal issue that I dealt with one of my trials. So we had a diabetes trial of my last company. It was done in Europe, and it was done from September to April, flu season.
Okay.
Right?
What years are we talking?
This is 2015, 2016.
Okay.
And so we're doing a trial, thousands of people, and someone comes down with the flu. Okay. Immediately, it's my drug that caused it.
Right. Sure.
And I have to prove that it was the flu and it wasn't my drug.
Mm-hmm.
How do I prove that?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
This is your water analogy, isn't it?
yeah, that water causes cancer. And my part of it is, do you know anybody who has had cancer and didn't drink water?
Yeah.
So water causes cancer.
Water causes
There you
cancer.
go. Yeah.
And how do you argue against that?
Can't argue against it.
Can't argue.
And I think that's the problem is there are people that will die of things and whatever it is, but you can't disprove a negative.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem.
Do you think there's corruption, corruption in influence in these drug companies on a federal level, working in concert with the government? Is it incompetence that we're getting such mixed messages? Is this Is it
Probably
because
got to be real careful with some of these answers.
Yeah, yeah, and that's fine.
Just
It
heads up.
feels to me a dumb guy who talks shit on a microphone for a living. It seems sinister almost, like a profit motive at all cost. Just make money. Who cares what the VAERS report says? And people are dying from in huge numbers. And from what I understand, when you've got a drug that goes out into market, if there's one death, they yank that shit. And like for the most part, if there's a couple hiccups where there's 10,000 possibly deaths that they can say are related to the vaccine, overall it's worth it because there's hundreds of millions of them going out. But those reporting systems are reporting that people are having some serious issues with it. Is it? I don't know. Is it a corruption thing? Is it a?
Wait, what do you mean by serious issues? Who's having serious issues?
I don't know. The VAERS reporting system, right? Where people report, oh my God, I've got long hauler COVID, or
Right.
someone died.
Yep.
One girl had a heart attack. She was like 19, like the day after she took it. Whether the water analogy again.
There you go.
But
She got the flu. How do you know that?
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the details, so to go back to that analogy of the diabetes, I would have to prove it. So what I would have to do is someone would get sick. I immediately would get them flu tested. I would pull their blood. I would pull cheek swabs to get DNA. I would get saliva. I would get everything.
Come.
Rarely.
I think you get that
rarely.
in the cheek, I think.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was just it was rarely. Yeah, out of my cheek, and then, and I would have to then essentially prove that it was the flu or it was a cold or whatever it was. I had to prove that, and
Can't
know-
you just go? It's flu season. Of course, one person got the flu.
No, because-
don't be stupid.
you'd like to, but I'll tell you, and when people die, I have trouble believing that people have died from the vaccine. I absolutely believe that somebody died from it, 100%.
Yeah.
So I was talking to my wife about Teslas, right?
Car?
So, yep.
How many you got?
So one. So when there is a self-driving Tesla that gets in an accident,
Yeah.
what happens? There's been like 3, right?
Yeah.
So far, yeah.
And
Yeah. News reports galore. Oh my
galore.
God, they're unsafe.
These things are unsafe. You can't put the. How many people died during that 30-second clip in car crashes?
Yeah, yeah.
Thousands.
It's absurd. The argument, and that's going to get so streamlined where these things are driving themselves and they know what lane you're in versus where there's a rock in the road and when to move over when it's that thing's going to be gridded and mapped.
But the point is that they.
But I know what you're saying.
They want the.
Juice
They
the
want the
story.
hype, yeah, and you know, I
Can't wait to tear it down.
I said years ago.
Negative wins.
Yeah, I said exactly. I said years ago that I stopped watching the news, and I really did. I get my news here, and if it's not important,
Fair
if
and
it's not
balanced, that's
here,
what we are.
Then it's
Yeah.
not important. And obviously, I read scientific papers and that sort of thing, maybe not a daily basis, but often. But I think the media is just they're playing with us now. The corruption question. Recently, I think just yesterday, the CDC came out and said, 5 days is now good enough if you're.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, it was Ed Baston, the CEO of Delta, that got the CDC to change that. There's no way that the CDC would make that change if they didn't have some data. Now, here's something interesting. When the FDA approved the drug for kids for 5 to 12, nobody would give it until the CDC came out and said, yes, we agree, which makes no sense to me. The CDC has no bearing on any of this.
Authority.
They have no authority.
So who should have been the authority?
The FDA. When the FDA okayed it
Yeah.
for schools and even pharmacies, they're like, well, not till the CDC backs it as well. Why?
Yeah.
The CDC has they're
It's like waiting on the who.
they're like the NTSB. When an airplane crashes, the NTSB can't shut down airlines. They can't. All they do is they go in and they take a report and they hand it to the FAA. And it might say, FAA, you've done all this stuff wrong. The FAA doesn't have to do anything about it. They have no authority to take the license from the pilot or anything like that. The FAA does, but the NTSB doesn't. That's the CDC. They have no authority. They can't. They
No,
can't
but
say.
to that point is
Thank you.
Sort of.
well, okay, so that's an independent body that looks at it and says, puts their report in of what happened in their opinion of that. And just like you said, the FAA doesn't have to do a fucking thing about it.
Yeah.
That could be the problem. So they could look at it and go, "You were completely fucking wrong here," and the FDA go, well, we're not going to do anything about it. We don't agree, and that's where the question of the corruption level comes in. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong for the CDC waiting on that, but having a sort of a second voice in that, a second opinion on that, I could see where that would give some validation to people. I understand they don't have any authority technically. And you could argue whether that's a good or a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because if all the authority lays in one side with the FDA, then if it's tainted on any level, you don't really know what you're getting. And so if there's a contradiction between the CDC and the FDA, then that could be a problem
That's true. Is there corruption?
on
I
every
can't-
level.
I can't tell you how much. So
This basement's corrupt.
it pushed me out of my diabetes company. It pushed me out of being in the company. I lasted 2 years, and I remember the day I was in Washington, D.C., sitting in front of a panel of Congress, trying to tell them that the FDA was making some odd requests of my drug, and it wasn't right. And I thought, I'm never going to win this.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say I don't want to win it, but I'll tell you, I didn't have the time. I
Not
didn't
worth
have
the
the
fight
The money.
sometimes.
It wasn't.
The
it wasn't
money,
worth
the
it to me.
power behind you.
It just, I just thought I can do so much more besides sitting in front of these fucking politicians.
Yeah.
Whether they're on the blue or the red.
Yeah.
Fucking hate them all.
Yeah.
Because they all
They're all bought and paid
lied.
for. Mm-hmm.
Right. They're all paid for. They all. I mean, exactly. They're all in the same boat.
Just whether or not
And
what
I
you're
remember-
pitching aligns with their,
red or blue.
support.
I don't know how the medical field works with going in front of Congress and blah blah blah, but I do know how, dealing with the FCC and getting big heads of media companies in front of Congress to pitch, fight on behalf of us in radio. And our CEO would go there and from Boston to DC and fight in front of Congress. Like, there are people that are paid lots of fucking money to go fight those battles. Who knows what their incentive is? Which sounds kind of like what you're dealing with. Like, who knows what someone's incentive was? You didn't feel right about it.
Right.
But
why do you think? So where did 10 days come up? They made it up.
It was
made
arbitrary. I can
where
remember.
Did, where did 6 feet social distancing come from?
They made it up.
That goes back to like the 1800s in some wacky ass paper.
Yeah.
And they just that's where that went back to.
That's it.
Had no basis in truth or reality.
No.
So they were just throwing whatever at it.
People say follow the science, and I would say follow the real science, not what the media tells me is the
you go.
science.
If
Because
someone
it's a big
tells you to
difference.
follow the science, that's a signal.
Yes.
That person has not been following the science.
I agree.
That's what I pick up from
One of
this.
those catchphrases.
All the people that
Scares the
tell
shit out of
me,
me.
they're the same people that have the list of you're selfish, you don't care about other people, you're killing and murdering people, and you refuse to follow the science. It's like, okay, I know where you're getting your news from. I don't need to know anymore. But I'm interested in what you thought when Fauci was going back and forth with
masks?
Rand Paul.
Oh, yeah.
And Rand, I felt like, and I watched a lot of that shit, and I thought Rand was kicking his teeth in. And then I'd see people go, oh man, Fauci owned him. I'm like, what were you watching in that? He's getting pressed for the first time ever. No media outlets pressing Fauci on anything, ever. He's pressing him, and Fauci's going, you don't know what you're talking about. You're wrong. You're wrong. Well, that's not owning someone.
No.
He refuses to answer questions. I don't know why this guy has gotten Lord Saint fucking Fauci status.
Because they put him on that pedestal.
Yeah.
They just keep trumping him out there. No.
Do you think Fauci's a good guy or a bad guy?
So my antibody company I was telling you about, my first employee, I got her from Fauci's lab in Tampa. So she came from Fauci's lab. She ran Fauci's lab for almost 20 years
Nice poach.
and was able to get her to move to Charleston and be part of my company, my antibody company. Fauci is a politician,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
and he
Hasn't seen a patient in
What was the
50
last? Yeah,
years.
what was the last time he was working in a lab? Exactly.
No,
It's-
so when he would write grants for the last 20 years, he would get them. His lab would get them. Well, I guess the last 10 years he probably didn't write any because he was in the NIH. But before that, I mean, he got them, and if his name was on it, he got it. I mean, I know I spoke to him when I had my antibody company, when I would need things moved through, I would make a phone call because I was able to do that.
Yeah.
But he's a politician.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. He's not a scientist. He may have that background, but
Not anymore.
he didn't do. I mean, imagine being a surgeon and not touching a patient for 20 years,
50 years.
50 years, whatever the number is,
Yeah.
and then go back. Good luck.
And,
I mean,
and being considered
And being
an
good.
expert, the greatest of
and
all.
the only voice. I
the
mean, him
only
saying,
voice, exactly.
If you disagree with Fauci,
Yeah.
you disagree with science. Like, what the fuck? Like, I don't know much, but I know science is a completely always changing.
Very fluid.
It's very fluid. That's what it is. It's what it's always been. To sit there and go, I'm science?
Yep.
Like, that is. Does that piss you off?
follow the
Does that-
science
it's got to
means
piss you
follow
off.
Fauci.
Yeah.
Follow
Essentially.
Fauci, yeah,
That's-
essentially.
he associates as.
gotta be
He
infuriating.
identifies as science.
yeah. Follow the real science.
Yeah.
Man, boy, I couldn't agree more. But what I do, people can do what they want. But what I do is, if I don't find it on a website called PubMed, so PubMed, PUBMED, any peer-reviewed published article shows up on PubMed. So it has to be peer-reviewed.
Yeah.
Which
What
means,
does that mean to
can't-
the layperson?
So-
You have to,
Peer-reviewed.
yeah.
So I write a paper,
I know what it means, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
know what it
and
means, too.
so I write a paper.
Say he'll explain it better than
way better than us.
And we submit it to the journal, and the journal then goes out and they find experts. So I act as that expert on certain things. So there's a journal, clinical transplantation. They have something that's in my field. They send it to me and say, hey, can you review this? It's blinded, so nobody knows that I'm the one reviewing it, but I review it.
Do you know who? Do they even blind you as to who
wrote it?
Some
wrote
journals
it?
do, some don't. Depends on the journal. But they never see me. They never know I reviewed it. But sometimes I see who the author is. And I go through and you normally never accept
to redline that thing?
You redline
Fuck
it.
that
And you do it.
bullshit.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
So they come up with something. You will redline shit a lot.
I can, if I say it's not moving forward, I mean, it's the editor's final choice. I've never seen an editor go against the reviewers.
Okay.
I've never seen it. Sometimes the reviewers will be like, I
So
give
if
it
you
a
get 10 reviewers and one is like, fuck this shit, and the other 9 are like, yeah, it's good.
I've never seen more than 4 reviewers. Normally,
okay. Or
normally
whatever.
it's 2.
I don't know what the
yeah,
number
it's,
is,
it's
but-
normally only
Really?
2.
I was
Okay.
going to ask you that
That's
too. of
interesting.
what,
Yeah, I always wondered
how
like
far the reach is.
how far a peer review can go. Can it go way bigger than that too?
Absolutely. If one person came up with 100, normally we score them. Someone said, I give it 100, and someone gave it a 30, they'd probably go out to 2 more people.
Yeah. Let's
Or
find out
the
what
editor, if
happened.
they knew that. A lot of times the editors are scientists, but maybe not in that field. But what peer review does, what peer review's
Checks your
supposed to
work.
do, it's checks and balances.
Yeah.
And so it's supposed to keep the guy in London who said that vaccines cause autism. It's supposed to stop that because an expert
You can't just say something
can't just say something.
because
Yeah.
you want to and have it be authenticated without any sort of pushback.
And as a reviewer, I'll go in and I will normally I will write questions to them and I'll say, I want to see this and I want to see this. How did you get to this? And we send it all back to the editor. The editor puts it all together, both reviewers, and they send it to the
author.
And then normally they go back and they answer every single question and they send it back to us. And I can choose. I can say,
If
you know
that's
what?
satisfactory, then you can say, okay, good enough. I just had some questions. Now I got to know. Or if it's bullshit,
Exactly.
you can shut it down and be like, yeah, not good enough. Nice
Exactly.
try.
And when I see something that's just, out of this world, I see something that someone says that a vaccine causes autism, I'm going to say, there's no frickin' way. I need to see more data. I want to see your notebooks. I want to see, and if you don't want to
Do
go
you
with
get
that,
paid to do peer reviews? It's got to be a pain in the ass to go through all someone's work like
It's an
that.
honor, my man.
I know it's an honor, but it seems like it'd be very time consuming and very boring. No offense.
no, it's not. No, not
yeah,
when you're
but not
when
when
you're
it's
a
in your
nerd.
field.
When you're a
When it-
nerd,
when
Yeah,
it's
when
in
it's
your
in
wheelhouse.
oh,
yeah.
it's
You gotta kinda
you
geek
get
out
off
on
on
it.
it.
Yeah,
but
okay.
rarely they don't pay you. Most don't pay you. At the end of the year, sometimes you'll get a stipend of $500 for reviewing
Well, Target gift card.
10 of them.
Thank you.
I mean,
Yeah.
no, they don't pay you basically.
Yeah.
But, I've published 12, 13. So there's been 26 people who have reviewed mine. So it's kind of like,
You ever get one knocked down?
that I wrote?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh, absolutely.
Why are you
What
fucking
kind of
throwing out?
bullshit were you trying to
What are
throw
you
out
trying to
there?
peddle over here, man?
no.
You're losing all credibility with our audience.
Oh, without a doubt. If you will never find an author that hasn't had stuff shot down ever.
Really?
Oh, absolutely.
And what is it? Is that just some implicit bias that comes in that you didn't see because you're too into it?
Or it could be a reviewer who
And they know who you are. Like, fuck this
a
guy.
reviewer's on the other side. So
True.
you believe that this drug does X and they believe this drug does not, and they've published on that saying the opposite. They're not going to agree with you.
Yeah.
You just said that all their stuff is not right.
Right.
Even though you might be right, they're not going to agree
They're
with
not
you.
going to go
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
And normally you when you submit as an author, they normally ask, tell us anybody you think should be a reviewer and anybody that shouldn't be a reviewer.
Yeah.
So oftentimes there'll be people I know that disagree with my science that I will list as like this person works for a drug company
competitor.
that is completely a competitor against what I'm doing. So when we published in Diabetes, there were people that I would list that worked for or had worked for the insulin companies, and I would say, these people that's not going to work.
They're too biased on their
Way
own.
too biased.
Yeah.
And normally the publishers are the editors are pretty good about it,
Mm-hmm.
but it still happens. I mean, stuff gets through. The autism got through for 10 years. It got through.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So it happened. It's sad.
You
but
know, I have questions about, and it's good that you're here, not only because of this field that you're very aware of, but you're also a pilot. And you've flown plenty, you fly a lot, whether it's your plane or Delta. I think the federal government has done everything they can to push the mask mandates. And the only place they could really touch was federal bodies. So any federal building, the airports.
FAA.
The FAA, exactly. And so I believe the Delta CEO and American Airlines, these guys going to Congress going, look, these tubes are way cleaner air than walking around outside. You're not getting COVID in here. And Fauci and Biden and everybody else is pushing mask. What do you think? Do you think masks are necessary in any of these planes?
So I will say this, and let me finish.
Okay.
Masks absolutely cut down on transmission of diseases. 100% it does.
Our little flimsy paper mask?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I ask you this. If you walked in for surgery and the doctor walked in and go, yeah, I'm not going to wear a mask and I'm not going to wash my hands, I'm just going to put gloves on, you'd be okay with it?
No.
No, of course not. You want them having a mask because you don't want them spittling into your, and that's where people, so in an airplane, you're 100% right. That air is very clean. What's not is dude who's sneezes or coughs all
Sitting
over.
right behind you and coughs on the back of your head.
Exactly. Or coughs on the tray table and I didn't wipe it down well enough and then I touch it and I rub my eye. Now, I'm not scared of COVID. It does not scare me. I don't.
Me either.
It scares my mom who had lung cancer and had a quarter of a lung taken off. Absolutely.
Yeah.
My 93-year-old Nana. Absolutely. You, 100%.
Yeah.
My kids, the only reason I got 2 reasons. One, so we could
Child
travel.
abuse.
No, so we could travel. Well, child abuse, but
Child
so,
abuse,
so we
yeah.
could travel.
You
we
hate your kids. Whatever.
come
It's
back
fine.
to come back from other countries. You had to either show that or we had to get tested as well to get back. Second is 50 years from now. I know that vaccine's not hurting them.
Mm-hmm.
It may not help them in 50 years, but it's not going to hurt them. And
Just out of curiosity, the vaccine that you developed, how long did it take to get FDA approval?
we never took it to.
Oh,
FDA.
it never got that far?
No,
Okay.
no, never took it there. So, but you guys talked about it. The flu vaccine every year, something changes in that, and that happens in 6 months from the time they decide what it is. And by the way, you didn't get the flu from the vaccine, but
Sure shit did.
let's press on.
I sure
You may have
shit
gotten
did.
the flu, but it was not the version. Well, actually, it could have been the version in the shot because it takes about 2 weeks for you to get full antibodies. So you did not. But
I did. But
Aren't they always chasing the
digress.
dragon in that kind of scenario? They're
100%.
almost a year behind in that
That's
flu,
exactly it.
or at least a couple years, whatever. They're at least a
Yeah.
year behind in that. So
they go out to they go to the World Health Organization, CDC. They go to China,
yeah,
and they go and they swab in the farms. They swab animals and people, but and they come back and they go, here's the 100 flus out there, different flus, and they say, boy, here's the ones that we think are going to be the most prevalent, and then they push those far, and they have to decide about in February or March
to be able to get it
so that
in
they're ready.
production and
So
and
they're
have
ready
it
in
time for
July,
season.
August.
Yeah.
Yep. And so, yes, there are times when they.
Fuck's going on with the animals in China, man?
Wow.
Why are they
Wet
such
markets?
why are they such a cesspool of
It might be one of the sheep getting punched or
Yeah, sure,
whether
sure.
I don't know.
checking?
But no, you're right. I mean, and there's years where
Surprised that where I'm getting my flu shot from a cow in China.
Yeah.
you are, and
Yeah.
from chickens. Yep, and then the people.
So the masks, I love the picture of former Vice President Joe Biden and his wife Jill on the beach with
Yeah.
their dog, both wearing masks.
I know.
There's no one within 10 yards of them. It's an empty beach.
Just when that
How about when they're
picture
by
was taken.
themselves?
Yeah.
I love when they're by
Like,
themselves.
this is
All right, put them on. We're going to take a
Is
picture.
there any excuse like that makes sense on the plane? I've always said the air in there is great. Fuck that. I don't. And for someone like me, it's very uncomfortable to wear the mask. Some people, it's not.
I don't disagree. I hate it.
I hate it.
Yeah.
I didn't go to California for Christmas because I was like, in part, like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go in a big rush of people in those lines. Not because I'm worried about COVID, but fuck that.
Agreed.
And I just don't want to wear a mask. I don't want to wear a mask for 4.5 hours on a plane.
Yep.
I
You
just don't want
don't.
to do it.
You eat very
So-
slowly, so you don't.
Yeah, but they're starting to say now that between bites, you have to put your
Up,
mask
down,
between
up, down,
sips.
up,
It's
down,
just
up, down.
and it's like, no, I'd rather walk there. Forget it. I'm not interested. But on a beach, is that just pure theater? Is there any reason?
100%.
Are they worried about the fishes, giving COVID to the fishes?
Well, here's the part that I think is kind of ridiculous is when people think if you walk outside, suddenly you can't get COVID. Of course you can get COVID. If you're outside and you're downwind from somebody and they sneeze, you might as well be in an airplane.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to get it. But when you're by yourself, and look, I'm the first one not to wear a mask because it doesn't, the virus doesn't scare me.
Yeah.
But I really don't care if they don't wear them in an airplane. I wouldn't. I'd be much happier not wearing one.
Yeah.
But I get why they're doing it. I don't think that it should be the FAA deciding that
Yeah.
at all. I don't. That's not right. I think that
Well, I think it's the federal government.
It's all the
deciding
federals, exactly.
Absolutely.
So
to the
when
FAA.
when
I
the
think
FDA says
would
it,
say lose them.
yeah. Oh, I
although the FDA doesn't have anything to do with masks either. Really, that's more CDC.
that's
Essentially,
well no.
it's the FDA.
Well, CDC makes their recommendations,
Right.
But they don't. They don't necessarily, and the World Health Organization, and they just kind of go along. But
Well,
I hate masks.
yeah, I do too.
My kids, I'll tell you, my kids have, we sent the kids to school the moment, thankfully down south, last September, they were only out of school for, I don't know, 2 months, back
Yeah.
in like March, April of 20.
And were they full teachers?
Oh,
full-
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, straight. We sent them right in. I mean,
Yeah.
first, second, we were allowed to send them, get in school.
Get in school. Yeah.
But they have to wear masks. And then,
Still?
so November it expired. In Charleston, they said, okay, you don't have to wear a mask anymore. And the governor said, if a school district mandates masks, we'll cut your funding. And it's like, are you fucking give me a? I'd like to see you
Really?
cut the funding to Charleston, South Carolina, the number one destination for the last 5 years on various, USA Today, travel, all
Condé
those
Nast.
things. I mean, Condé Nast. Charleston's always number one. The largest, I believe, still the most population in the state. You think he's going to cut the funding to Charleston? I would love to
Empty
see you do
threats.
that.
Yeah.
It's an empty threat, and I would have just gone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I want to see you do that, and then I want to see you get reelected.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, you do that, and
Done.
you haven't pissed off half the people. You've pissed them all off.
You won't
Yeah,
even get out of the
yeah.
recall.
You wouldn't even you'd be impeached. and so yeah, we sent our kids in right away. They did have to wear masks, and then they cut it in November, and I know my wife doesn't listen, but I was fine with them not wearing them once they. But I asked the kids. I said, "Is every other kid in your class?" And they said, "Well, there's one kid who doesn't wear them." And I said, look, I'm going to leave it up to you.
Yeah.
You guys get to decide. I mean, they're 10 and 8. Said, you guys can decide if you wear them. And they both said,
Gone.
no, they both
they
said,
stayed.
I think it's because everybody else was wearing
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
And so they both said, yeah,
Or you
it
got
doesn't,
some libtards.
dude, it doesn't bother them.
No, I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
it
Because they
doesn't-
know they're normal.
It doesn't bother
It's
them.
funny. It doesn't bother Marshall. It
Yeah.
doesn't bother Reed. It sort of does. Madison's just fine wearing it. She'll tell other people to wear it. You know, they don't seem to be bothered. For me, it is a and with glasses, forget about it. They're constantly
Fogging
fogged
up.
up.
Yeah.
Like, and the only places I have to wear it, airports. And
office.
doctor's offices and the vet, which sucks because I take Cece and she's a puppy, and it's like I'm wearing this damn thing and I'm trying to find ways to like poke a hole in the thing or what, because I know it's not doing anything really, and I wouldn't go in there with the sneezes and sniffles anyways. I just wouldn't do that.
If people just stopped, if they weren't, well, I mean, I don't really care if anybody gives it to me, but let's say they stopped everybody from going out when you're sick. I mean, that would change things. The mask does stop stuff, but I am in full favor of getting rid of it. And you know what? I don't have a problem with when a business says you have to wear a mask. That's fine.
Their prerogative.
It's my choice to go. I'm going to go to the other supermarket and shop there because I don't really want to wear one. I'm happy not wearing it. But I think it's your right to do that. If you want to say you have to wear a mask, go for it. You're probably going to lose half your business, but
Yeah.
But then if you say no masks, you're probably losing the other half of the
Are
business.
people wearing them in South Carolina, just walking around?
I'd say half of them.
Yeah.
Really?
I
Half?
think it's about more than half here.
Probably 51. Yeah, no, I mean,
I've seen an uptick recently.
Yeah,
in
recently.
people
I think the
wearing them.
Omicron.
Like when
because
I
the
first
Omicron,
got back here,
74%. It's the crazy. You got to get.
Till this
they're
morning.
scaring
I've seen
people.
no one. Like when I first got back here to Michigan, nobody was wearing a mask. Very
No,
rarely.
because we had gone through
was-
it, and
was-
we were coming out of it.
Yeah.
And now they're using the scare
And
tactic
it was
again.
more
that
like,
it's-
okay, I know who you voted for. Like it was
It
just.
was. It was almost. It was like a red MAGA hat.
I
Right.
love that analogy. It's
True.
the red
I like
MAGA
that.
hat version.
It was the other side.
So it was like, oh, okay, great. You're telling everybody who you voted for. The asshole in his car alone wearing a mask. You know, it was hilarious.
Yep.
But dude, when I went to Meijer the other
it's
day,
up.
it was hard to find people not wearing masks. And me, I'm licking doorknobs and making out with strangers trying to get Omicron. Like, am I crazy to want to get Omicron?
no, I mean,
Like, I want to get it.
I've heard you. I don't. Most likely, there's a good chance you've had it.
At some point.
Yeah.
There's a good chance you've gotten it.
Can we get it again?
Is there a
And,
way
and
to
you
test
didn't know
that?
it.
Well, don't you think someone
Isn't
with
there some
my
sort of an antibody
with my
test or
history
something to show whether or not you?
Yeah, can you come on, man? You got to
Oh,
be
me?
able to pull.
Oh, you
just
said
in general?
When you said could you, I didn't know you meant me.
No, me. Can
No,
you get
I
it
mean-
twice? Can you get it again?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
You can. Wait. Are you saying can you get the same version again?
Okay. But so variants change, so you can get different variants of it, but you couldn't get the same variant.
So this one you seem to be able to get. Well, I'm not sure if you can get the same variant. I'm not sure about that. But
Okay.
I will say this is that
We hear conflicting. That's what I'm asking.
yeah, you get two people with Omicron. I can tell you that the exact DNA on both of those, even though they're the same variant, they're not the same. There's something different about every single version, even in your body,
Constantly mutating.
every single time. That's why it's good and bad. They develop real quickly, but they're error prone.
Do you agree or disagree that this is not going away anytime soon? It's going to be an endemic. It'll be here, forever.
Rest of life.
Is it going to be?
And so we're all going to get it at some point. At some point, everybody's going to run into COVID.
You've gotten it. So
Yeah.
this was a year ago, before vaccines came out. There was a study, and a good study, that looked at hundreds of schools under 12 years old, and they tested to see if these kids had at multiple cities around the country to see if these kids had COVID before. And depending on the area, this is last December, so a lot of kids weren't even in school. Between 40 and 60% had already had it.
What's what we were asking though? If there's
nobody
a
knew it.
test to show whether or
if
not
there's
you've
not a
actually
test to
had it.
show, or if there's not a test that can differentiate between
How did
Delta
they test
or
those
Omicron.
kids?
So you can test the blood to look for the
Antibodies?
antibodies. But if you had it twice, you'd have to do some pretty detailed DNA
To know
analysis.
the two different times. I'm not necessarily knowing about that.
The only
but
way you'd know it is you're not feeling well, you test, you're positive. 6 months later, you get it again, you test, you're positive. But I also say this, finding it in your nose doesn't mean that you have it or that that
It affected you, that you
yeah,
came
that
down
affected
with
you.
it.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, it's. I bet you if we swabbed this whole house, I bet we could find it. Honestly,
do it.
I bet you could find it.
Yeah.
it's somewhere. You got
Wouldn't
enough
surprise
people.
me.
So it's just it's out there, and the biggest part of me though is 1918 was kind of the beginning of the flu, and in 1918 people went crazy for it. 1919, a lot less people, and 1920 it has declined. And 5 years ago, half the people wouldn't even get
What do you think about the flu taking last year off?
what. It was probably because honestly, because
People
everybody
worn
stayed
out.
inside.
Yeah.
And because places were closed, so no doorknobs, and because people wore masks.
What do you make of? And I've talked about it on the show. I was listening to Peter McCullough, Dr. Peter McCullough. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
One more question. Now, hold on. If you can still pass COVID,
Yeah.
why couldn't you pass the flu? If the transmission was enough for that the COVID rates went crazy, when you say there's the lockdown and there was all this stuff, of why you say the flu took the year off, and I can see the numbers would decline because of hand sanitizers and masks and all the other shit. I can see there'd be a decline, but the numbers are staggering of what they say was actually the flu compared to what is every year historically.
So most of it, my understanding from what I've read is most of it couldn't get here, right? So it's coming from China, it's coming from Asia,
What the fuck is going on over there?
and those ships and those airplanes weren't running. So how does it get here? Because it's not like one person comes in with the flu and then it goes. That's not right. You get one person in an airplane who's sneezing on people,
And then
or you
they
get a
scatter when they get off the plane.
right, or you get
Or
a
their families.
sky waitress who sneezes on somebody's food and is
Who's
now
doing that? Is any sky waitress sneezing on someone's food? I mean, that just seems so crazy.
Intentionally or not, who knows? Depends on you're an asshole.
I've admitted I'm an idiot. I wanted to bring up Peter McCullough. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
yeah.
He did 3 hours on Rogan, and I listened to it, and I thought it was fantastic. And he was adamant. And he had data to back up his point that you get COVID once, you are done. You'll never get it again. People that think they got it twice didn't. They didn't really have it the first time. They thought they did, but they didn't. What do you make of something like that? Because it's in stark contrast to what you're saying, that you can get it again. What all the media is saying, you can get it multiple times. You can, and everybody has an example. I know a guy that had it twice, and this guy's going, no, you are not getting it a second time. Period. You're done with it.
You're not getting the exact same one a second time.
He was acting like COVID, period.
So I would have agreed with him. So I didn't listen to the whole 3 hours.
Okay.
I listened to parts of it, like clips that I was finding. I didn't listen to all 3 hours, but I would have agreed with him as an immunologist. In every other disease that I know of, you get it, you really can't get it again. The flu, for example, when you get that one flu, that strain of flu, you're
done.
not going to get that strain again.
So every season there's a new flu. You can get that again.
That's right.
So
Every
what
flu's
is he
different.
talking about then?
I
mean, it just seems-
think I really like. I think he is a very smart guy.
Yeah.
I
U
think
of
he's-
M. I think he was a Michigan
Was he?
med school grad. Yeah.
I think he was going on traditional immunology, and he's absolutely right about traditional. And then the other side of it is, I think he's absolutely right. You can't get the same version twice. That's because your body's going to make better antibodies than any vaccine, and even a vaccine company is not going to tell you that's different. Getting the virus is 100 times better than any vaccine.
So why were they pushing these people that got COVID, whether it's Aaron Rodgers or Joe Rogan or anybody else, and saying, "Oh yeah, you still need to get vaccinated"? Like, why would you? Money? Is it
No.
just to keep the message going forward?
I think it's to keep the message, because that's
Vaccine.
ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. And
They deny natural immunity.
but then sometimes they say the opposite. So to come back into the country, you either had to show a vaccine card or a proof that you had COVID in the last 6 months.
Oh, not a negative test.
You also had to have a
And
negative
yeah,
test.
probably, yeah.
But you had two choices:
Really?
be vaccinated or have something that said you had it in the last 6 months.
That's actually the first I've ever heard of that.
Yep.
Wow.
So they're kind of contradicting themselves in saying, well, you can come back even without having been vaccinated as long as you have that I think it was 6 months. 5 months, something like that, 5 or 6 months. You had to have a PCR test that showed you were positive and a doctor's note that said you were positive, and you didn't have to be vaccinated because you are.
Yeah.
And you're it.
Yeah.
But could you get the exact same version? Not that I know of. I don't know of a disease or of a virus that you can. Our bodies are pretty good, but there are. Well, no, that's not true. There are some. There are some viruses that you can get twice, but normally it's because they change. The other reason is because our body doesn't recognize them well enough, and
Yeah.
we're just it slips through our immune system.
So where do you think this goes? My fear all along is anytime, historically speaking, you can go back to through governments globally even, they don't relinquish power that they gain. Like
Yeah.
that's the fear in all of this is Fauci is loving being interviewed everywhere, being on the cover of People magazine. The power he's wielding, this unelected bureaucrat, is making decisions for all of us, and he clearly loves this power. The federal government loves. They always want to mandate shit and close this and do that. Whatever they can get their fucking hands into. So where do you see this going? Because my thought personally is a lot of people are fucking done. They're just not going to listen to him anymore. My brother's done. He was the most militant,
That's crazy.
mask wearing. You saw him.
I can't believe you said that.
Yeah.
When I heard that
He's
a
done.
couple nights ago, I could not believe
Yeah.
that he is.
You saw him. You were there in Arizona with me, and he
was terrified.
He's terrified.
And when was that? That was
6 months ago.
yeah. He was terrified.
Does this become one of those vaccines like the fucking MMR? And,
think so.
and do you think this becomes one of those automatic vaccines?
I
part
think
of
it'll
the-
be
part of the
combined.
portfolio?
Yep, I think it'll be combined with the flu vaccine.
But you don't get that.
Combined
But you don't
with
get that as a baby.
No, you won't get.
No,
it.
that's what I was meaning. If this was like the MMR, like when you get the vaccines as a kid,
I don't think so. I think you'll get it.
What's the fear of giving it to babies? I mean, why 5 years old?
That's sort of the bars that the FDA has set in the past.
Okay.
So it's almost case law sort
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah.
Where pediatrics
Precedent was set.
Yep, pediatrics is it depends on the type of drug, but it's either 12 or 14 normally. So
Yeah.
you would think, well, wouldn't it be 17 or 18? No, it's normally 14. That's so our device for my company, we were able to get pediatric approval, but it came a little after our first approval of adults.
So to let you answer the question, where do you think this goes fully? Like, do you
I don't think
think
it goes anywhere.
so not just that, but I mean as a nation, as a globe, do you think people are going to be so divided a year from now? Like, I'm on team mask, I'm on team vaccinate everybody, or you're an asshole piece of shit who's trying to kill and murder everybody, and then there's the other half that have just they're done.
Yeah.
I still think that's going to carry you. That's
I do, and it's
scary, man.
It's sad, but
Yeah.
I don't see it. I don't see it changing at least until I think this next election is going to be very interesting.
yeah.
I would not want to be on the blue team because I think they're going to get their asses handed to them.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think people are starting. You've mentioned it in the inner cities. People aren't who traditionally vote blue.
yeah.
They're not taking the vaccine. They're going, this is ridiculous.
especially the more you want to mandate it and the more shit you put in
People
place.
don't like that.
I'm more team mask than I am team vaccine than mandate. Well, because it's my personal right. I can get it whether I'm vaccinated or not. I can get it and transmit it and spread it whether I'm vaccinated or not. It's a personal protection thing.
Yeah.
The mask at least gives, however minimal, some protection against, I don't give a shit about me. I don't want to give it to an old lady in the grocery store. If I do have it and I don't know, I don't want to give it to an old lady that may get sick and die.
You're right.
Right?
You're 100% right.
That's why I say I'm more team mask than
Yeah.
vaccine. And not that I'm for mask mandates by any
I was gonna
stretch.
say, I don't see you wearing a mask
No,
anywhere.
not at
sir.
all. I fucking
How many
hate
old
it.
ladies are you protecting?
No, but that's my point. Is that
Yeah.
that's
You can understand the thought
as
behind
shitty as it is
Yeah.
that's a better level of protection than that to the public, to others, I should say, not to yourself, but to others as far as how I transmit it and what I can do. Because I always laugh like a concert. You can go if you show that you're okay, great. Or that you had a negative test, great. Okay, so you tested negative a couple days ago, and 25% of the people tested negative, and 75% are vaccinated, and however many percentage of those vaccinated people are currently carrying it. And this has been another big point of mine, is that I even say that the vaccinated people are a bigger threat because they're asymptomatic and they don't know that they have it, so they're not quarantining, they're not taking any extra precautions, and they're more likely to spread it because they're not protecting anyone else. They're just out thinking that it's fine, even if they have a sniff. Oh, it's just cold. It's not COVID. I'm fine.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
You are absolutely right. And
You're goddamn right.
yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I don't see this going anywhere. I think the vaccines, we're going to have to keep taking them. I don't. I can't remember if I said this.
Have to?
I can't remember if I said this on the air, but I got the booster.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten the booster yet.
You
I should though, right?
you have not lost any of your.
You don't think so? Why are there so many media reports saying, "Oh, after 3 weeks, it's down to 20% effective"? Like,
When we're done, I'm going to look up and see if there's any papers on it. I bet I don't find anything.
really?
I bet I don't. Now, does it go down? Well, of course it goes down. But does it go down 2%, or does it go down to, 20%?
Yeah.
That's a big difference.
Do viruses like this have sort of a half-life? Like Omicron is a new variant that seems to be less,
Yeah, it wants to stay alive. It
dangerous.
doesn't want to kill the host.
right. Well, I mean,
Traditionally, they
does
get
it sort of
weaker,
have a
right?
half that where it dwindles down, and as it mutates, and it sort of becomes less dangerous, or you know what I'm trying?
Well, we talked about this. Remember on the way back from Arizona, we talked about whether it gets worse and kills more people, or if it gets, and it doesn't always go to the side of not killing as many people and getting less virulent. It doesn't always do that. This one tends to be. I heard something today. My parents had the news on, and they were saying now that if you take the antibody test, it's potentially not accurate for Omicron. So then now, if you test negative, you then need to go get a PCR test. What? Well,
Then why would you
then
even
why
have
are you
the other
selling the
test?
antibody test
Yeah,
if that's what you're
yeah.
selling? Yeah, right. Why are they
Where can
Just
you
like
get the
Merck's
PCR
pill.
test?
anywhere that gives you the antibody test?
they
can
do
do
both.
both. It just
It's the one,
takes
it's the one that takes like 24 hours
So
or something
urgent
instead
care.
of 1
urgent care
hour.
can do it. They send it out, but
Yeah, I went and got one.
so that was an antibody test because if you get it within an hour,
They
a
did
day-
both.
Oh, okay.
They sent mine out, and then they called me a couple days later.
So you got-
and said I didn't have it.
Yep. So you
And that was
you
a
can
few
be
weeks
sure.
ago.
Yeah, you can be sure. But to say that now that Omicron isn't showing up, well, something's wrong then because you either are not using the right antibody or it's changed significantly enough, which I don't think it has.
But it was 74%.
Till this morning,
Yeah.
and it came down to 20.
Yeah, 23.
Yeah.
Where do we go if I've heard other doctors like yourself said earlier that a lot of people have already had it and didn't know it. There could be up to 60% of people that have had this, didn't know it. Is there any way? Where do we go to try and figure something like that out to see what those levels are? Will they see you and go, "Hey, I just want to check and see if over the last year and a half I've had this damn thing"?
Here's the So the problem, yes, you can do it, but it's a crazy process. I mean, you're not going to go down
Why?
to CVS and do it. You have to put basically you have to look at all of your DNA, and you have to see all of your B cells that produce antibodies. You have to go back and look at all of those because all of us have gotten coronaviruses in the past. Hundreds of them. When you had a cold or you had what you
not
call the
new,
flu,
yeah.
right? You
was a
think you have the flu.
coronavirus.
Yeah, you think you have the flu. You go in, you get a flu test. It comes back negative. You still feel like crap. You've got all the same. It was probably a coronavirus. So at our ages, we've probably seen 10, 15, 20 of them. I mean, 100 of them, whatever the number is, you've seen them. So
Yeah.
if I go in and test your DNA and just look for the coronavirus, I'm going to find it. Anybody over 5, I'm going to find it.
Yeah.
Anybody over 2, I'm probably going to find it. Go into an 80-year-old, you're going to find a ton of coronavirus antibodies, but they're all different. So then you got to dig even deeper into that DNA. It's a
So it's
job.
not happening.
It would be so expensive. And here's my question: why does it matter if you've had it or not? I mean,
Well, if you're hoping that I have better protection because you've said that catching it is the best protection you can get.
you can do anything different though.
No, I'm not, but
Great
it
point.
might get peace of mind.
Yeah.
Going, okay, it turns out I had it, and I don't know how that works. I watch too many movies. You can pinpoint 6 months ago, you caught it on the 3rd. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't work that way, but I don't know. And so it's like, it turns out, Mike, you know what? That couple days when you kind of felt like shit and then it went away, you actually had COVID. And you're good, man. You've got huge antibody spikes.
You don't have to live in.
You don't have to live in fear. You don't have to worry about shit.
I think they can. I know they can. I think there's places that will test your blood and tell you what your antibody. It's called antibody titer. What your titer is for
TIDER?
TITER.
Titter.
Titter.
Nice.
All right. Yeah.
Titter.
Right.
And so they can look at how many antibodies you're making against whatever. We used to do that in my antibody company. That we would look at that. We would look at how many antibodies are against this, whatever it is. You know,
Sounds like you should have kept
Cobra
that
venom.
antibody business going right about now.
So the
So
I-
regret at this point.
well, no, not for what I sold it for.
Yeah.
But
Amen.
I will say this: the patents do expire in 3 years.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
leaving the door open.
Door's
How's,
open.
how's Blink TBI doing, by the way?
We are doing wonderful.
Yeah.
Biggest problem right now is we have too much data.
Well, that's
Why is that a problem?
Wow.
Trying to
Trying
put
to
it
go
all in
through it?
order?
You got to getting it up to the cloud, wherever the hell that is.
Yeah.
Getting it up there. I have 3 people, and that's pretty much the only job. And it's terabytes of data. And here's what I did for my investors. I wrote, we write a quarterly report. And so here's what to make this into layman's terms, the Library of Congress, they digitized everything. It's 10 terabytes.
it's not that much.
We are doing a terabyte a week of data.
Why? Why is it more than the Library of
We're
Congress?
capturing, so it's such high quality video, because we're capturing high speed video. And it's just, imagine.
For
it's-
those people that don't know, can you explain really quick?
So a company, we invented it's a device that you kind of hold up to your face, and it puffs a little bit of air on the corner of your eye.
It's almost like a VR goggles in a way.
Yeah.
Similar.
Yeah.
Very
Something
similar.
like just to give a visual of
And
what
people
it
might
would be
remember,
like.
you brought one in here, and
Yeah.
we did it, and
Yeah, we did and saw those soulless eyes.
shark eyes.
And
Doll's eyes.
so yeah, puffs a little bit of air in the corner of your eye, and what it's looking for is how long does it take from when the puff touches your eyelash to your blink reflex. So your blink reflex is like your knee as a kid. The doctor would hit it with the hammer.
Yep.
Your leg would move. Same reflex, except that tests the middle of your spine. Your blink reflex, touching your eyelashes when you're not expecting it, will cause you to blink. That tests your brain stem. So we're looking, it's a very simple system. It's 2 nerves, one that goes from the eyelash to the brainstem and one that comes back and says blink. That's it. And so being simple is nice because you can tell if something's wrong.
It's a 2-lane road.
2-lane road, so you know. And so we puff it. It knows when that puff touched the eyelash, and then we're taking about 20,000 pictures over 25 seconds. And
There's no way to cheat. That's
there's
the
no
best
way to
part.
cheat. You will blink.
Yeah.
100% you will
reflexive.
blink. Unless you had a stroke, you're going to blink, and you can't feel that. That's about the only way. Or a lot of Botox. But and it has happened. But
Yeah.
you will blink. And we're looking for different things. So we started out, the company is called Blink TBI. The TBI, when we started, was traumatic brain injury, concussions. COVID hit. February of 2020, I brought 12 salespeople in and trained them during the month of February 2020. And then March 1st, we told them to go out and sell in the world to every school and every sports team.
University, and yeah.
Yeah.
And then they shut everything down.
Then they shut it all down.
I hope they
including-
released
Yeah.
the mission.
This happened to me where I have an expensive Entresto I take, right, for my heart. It's expensive. If you insured, not insured, it's an expensive drug. But my cardiologist would have samples galore.
Yeah.
And he'd just be like, here's 3 months worth. And for a year and a half, I didn't have to. Well, COVID hit, just like what you're explaining here. The sales reps couldn't fucking come into the doctor's office anymore. No more samples.
Yeah.
And now I'm paying out the ass for Entresto.
Exactly.
So continue. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Where was I?
You were saying that
COVID
that
shut it down.
COVID
right.
basically shut you
Yeah.
guys down.
So
from
shut us down. And so we kind of had two options. People are going, flatten the curve in 2 weeks. And immunologist here is going, this is going nowhere. This will be here in 200 weeks.
Yeah.
So this isn't going anywhere. So went back to my board of directors. We got all together with our advisors and we said, what do we do? And we said, well, we've wanted to test all these other things in the brain. We've wanted to test, I think I probably mentioned it last time I was here. It was, we always wanted to test for Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and migraines, dementia, ADHD, all these different things that are occurring in your brain. We wanted to test all those and see if we could detect them. And so we figured this is a good time. People are still having migraines. They're still getting Parkinson's. And so we spent probably from March 2020 till maybe the end of that year or so of 2020, we spent going through the literature, looking for because there's so many diseases, which ones are most likely to work, right? And then January of 2021, we launched 8 clinical trials. Maybe over the last 6 months, first 6 months, we launched about 8 trials. Parkinson's is just finishing, starting dementia and stroke right now, migraines, Alzheimer's, ADHD. We can detect if you really need, if you're actually ADHD or not.
It seems like they're throwing that around a lot.
Yeah, real easy.
Like everybody's ADHD.
Yeah.
And how many actually are?
Our data is showing, all I'll say is our data is showing that we can detect if somebody needs it or not, or if they're just taking it. And so
the meds for it.
Yeah. So the Vyvanse,
that's a great thing.
The Adderall.
Yeah. The overprescribing that's going on these days. It's especially something like that where there isn't, where it's a clinical diagnosis,
right?
Where it's opinion based. So if you have, when you can find,
you just go in and say, I'm having trouble focusing.
Anything,
like here, take all these meds.
That's right.
If you can break through to that and have some sort of, my daughter's issues is all clinical, so it's really hard to get an actual diagnosis or a test result or something to be positive or negative. It's just, so with ADHD, they just throw in all the stuff at it. So to be able to break through on something like that and be able to really associate it or prove it one way or the other is fucking groundbreaking, man. It really is.
And
in this world of throwing meds at everything and big pharma and the bullshit that's going on right now, that's going to change a lot of lives, man. That's unbelievable.
Hopefully.
It's fantastic.
I hope so.
Yeah.
So what does that mean then? If you're able to test someone who complains about migraines, and I know Hat has had that, Beth had horrible migraines. Like, what does that mean in real world terms? What benefit is there if it's like, oh yeah, she's not lying, she's having migraines. Okay, well now what?
So some of the diseases I don't know the answer. We don't know the answer to some of them. So migraine, I think, is a good example. What does it tell us? Well, I think the goal, I don't know that we can do this yet.
All data is good data.
Yeah.
To a degree, right?
To a degree, right. And
somebody else can figure out what to do with it. But when you can find those differences and you can differentiate between that, and you can see on paper or on video or whatever it is, it's not up to you to decide that, but you can show something, you can show data that says, hey, this happens when this happens when this.
That's right.
So.
And I think that's the goal for something like migraine. Or if you can detect maybe what causes it or so there's tons of treatments for migraine. Which one works best? All of them might get rid of the migraine, but some of them might get rid of them better and might last longer or it's doing better things or what. And so you're right, Troy. I mean, we're collecting all this data. The other thing is drug companies have tons of drugs on the shelf that they've developed that for some reason have not made it to the next level. It's really hard. I mean, there's millions that haven't made it to the next, but they're potentially good drugs. And the reason is so this is an actual example, is for Alzheimer's disease. So I know Pfizer has, I think, the most well-known Alzheimer's drug, and does it really work? No one really knows, because what data are you getting? It's all subjective. They say to the patient, are you forgetting things? And they go, no. And they go to the spouse, are they forgetting things? Yes. Oh, then the drug's not working. And then it goes back to what we were saying. Now
Now it's not
everything falls
prescribed
apart.
as
They
much,
could be
it's-
forgetting less things.
Or they
could be forgetting more.
and they stop the
how
trial.
you quantify the difference is the real trick.
But if I can give you an objective answer, so I can say, when you take this, this person's getting better, or they're doing better when they're taking it than when they weren't taking it, you know, that potentially is valuable. Think about a company that has, you know, they buy the company, they buy my company for $500 million. Okay. If it helps them get one drug to market, they've paid that back tenfold.
Really?
One drug, right?
I
So
believe it.
pay $500 million on a chance to make trillions.
Yeah, just like
And
Really?
that's the
Pfizer.
goal.
33 billion?
So I don't know what there is for treatments for dementia. I have that stuff in my family. You know, my uncle who you know, PhD, Berkeley grad, valedictorian, professor at the University of Illinois, wrote ton of books, you know, that are used in classrooms and universities. Brilliant guy, and he's gone down bad. Like what can be done for them if you can diagnose? Like, it's crystal clear he's got problems. It's happening to other family members that I know. So what is the potential breakthrough for people like that with this kind of technology?
So the goal would be, if there's nothing to treat it, what Troy said, if I'm able to detect it, that might lead another scientist to go, well, shit, let me look at this data. And they find something, terabytes of data. So we give this 150 patients, they were scanned multiple times, and there were 75 questions for each time they got scanned. So you start doing the math, and you go 75 times the 150 patients times 2, you get these Excel sheets that are just obscene
Massive.
in data.
Yeah.
And we can only pick out certain things. We have statisticians that's their only job, is to pick things out. And by the way, if anybody is a statistician and needs a job, let me know. But
Does that pay well?
it pays a lot more than I would make. So it pays very well. But we got to, the goal is on these diseases where there's nothing, potentially down the line, that's how things come out.
Yeah, it's not about now. I mean, using this.
Some
now-
of it is,
Well,
but
I mean,
Yeah.
right, but using that sort of technology or that information, that data going forward it's not about this guy's Alzheimer's, and you'll be able to find the differences now. And I'm totally speaking out of turn. This is how we do it around here. We just act like we fucking know shit. But
I did the same thing for an hour and 17 minutes.
no. But fast forward that to 5-10 years down the line, when it's not about the person with Alzheimer's, but it's when they can test with whatever the lead in the water, the Kool-Aid, whatever it is, and they can show that this is having an effect on that part of the brain or whatever it is. That leads them to be able to sort of get to the root potentially of causes and things where you can start maybe preventing it in the first place, not necessarily curing it.
Yeah, I was just saying, write that down. He nailed it, and that's the goal. I mean, so dementia, for example. So it's actually the reason I'm in town is there's a group that we're going to work with that is we're going to be testing dementia patients, and there are so many types of dementia. There's a dementia with something called Lewy bodies and one without, and they're diagnosed completely separately, and and they're minor differences, or it could be a genetic difference, but it presents the exact same way. There's so many small things, but without that more data,
You're walking
you'll
blind.
never get there. And you'll never get there. And I think
do you remember, you might, and I'll fuck this up, I'm sure, but I think it was in France, some town in France. 60 Minutes did a story on this a few years ago, where they were having overwhelming numbers of people in this small village town getting Parkinson's, like everyone. And I mean, I don't know if you've ever been, it might be a nice place to start. I'm probably fucking up the story, but it was Parkinson's or dementia. And it was like they were trying to figure out what was going on in this very specific part of the world where like 80% of the people end up getting dementia or Parkinson's, whatever it was. I don't know if you've ever heard of anything like that.
No.
Yeah.
But I want to hear about it now.
60 Minutes did a story on this. we could probably use the Google machine to find it. But yeah, sounds like a place where you need to fly down to and look. We can find it after the show. I can try to find it for you. But
It's like
Yeah.
living on the power lines, you know, these things like that. When they start having these issues and you have to trace it back and you start putting the pieces back together. Oh, okay. Well, living on these power lines are starting to cause these issues and things like that. And
That's it.
So, and all data is good data
We'll
because
ask-
eventually it means something to somebody. It doesn't necessarily have to mean anything to you right now, but that doesn't mean that something to somebody else down the line.
Yeah, I review a lot of papers that I'd say half of them are retrospective reviews. So it's somebody who got somebody else's data and found something else about it.
Yeah.
yeah,
You
They didn't
take
even
that-
do the work.
yeah,
All they did was analyze what's already
a
there.
fresh set of eyes
Fresh
Absolutely.
set eyes.
helps tremendously.
I think everything we're saying right now would help with the media and with vaccines and COVID if all of this, CDC wasn't incentivized to be as
Yeah,
vocal as they are.
How much of that data is freely shared, and how much of it is proprietary with some of the stuff? You know, where you don't want other people having your data because it's yours and you did it, your R&D and the things like that. And how much of it is, a free for all? Like the more, the better. Everybody,
I imagine it's a phone call away if someone's doing research on Parkinson's and they want to request data from you.
But I'm sure there's some that is very close to the
Yeah.
best too.
You're right. So anybody that gets a grant, an NIH grant, they have to
Fed money, it's
publish it. Yeah, you can't hold it close to you. It's private money like ours. You're right. So like the group here called me and said, we want to do stroke and dementia. Here's what we can offer, all this stuff. Yeah, well, let's definitely work together. Other times,
You don't necessarily want. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
it's curious how that all works because
Yeah.
there's pros and cons to it.
Hey, lastly, and we'll wrap up the show, but I did want to ask you, because I think I fucked up on the air one day and people took me to task for it a little bit. I was talking about concussions and I was referencing your technology with Blink TBI and was making the point that I've made before about how everyone thinks it's just football, but that's not. And I think I said cheerleading,
you were right.
and someone said, dude, I love your show, but you are 100% fucking full of shit if you say cheerleading causes the most concussions.
It's wrong. Per capita, okay? So a cheerleading team has 10 people. A
Are we
football
talking
team
high
has
school
100.
cheerleaders, college cheerleaders where they're flipping in the air, pom-pom squads?
I don't know, but
We'll go 18 and
I,
under.
I can't tell you. I don't actually know that, but I do know there's 100 and some people on a football team. They're practicing. I'm telling you, there's not. Let's say one person out of 10 on the, and the numbers are a little skewed here. 2 people on the 10 group get hurt. That's 20%. 10 people on the 100 group get hurt. That's 10%.
Yeah.
Well, then cheerleading's more. But I'm telling you, per capita, there are more cheerleading and soccer.
I was going to say, I thought soccer was
Women's soccer is, I believe women's soccer is the highest, actually.
Really?
Cheerleading is way up there. Football is way up there. But
Gymnastics is gymnastics. I would think that would be up there.
Is it a chick thing? They're just clumsier. They're smaller brains. They
Women-
rattle around more. What are we talking?
I'm certainly not going to respond to that.
Good answer.
I know the women monsters, and I'm scared of them. But what I will say is that women are more sensitive to just in general.
Yeah, they don't take a beating well.
No. And also, they do tend to get concussions more easily. There's a study being done in Indiana, University of Indiana University, whatever they're called.
IU?
Yeah, IU.
Hoosier.
And they are doing this study where they are bouncing balls on people's heads and looking if they're concussed or not. And
How
they-
many times do I have to do it before you get concussed?
And I shortened the whole thing there, so it's not exactly what they're doing, but it's a great study actually.
I've never concussed anyone with bouncing my balls on their head.
Wow. We're on to
See
something.
what he did there?
We're on to something. I do see what you did there, and I'm onto it.
Okay, just checking.
I like it.
Dude, this has been a lot of fun.
Yes.
It's great to see you. It's great to have you in town.
Thank you.
It really is. I'm sure we picked your brain and confused a lot of people, but
I looked you square in the eye, and I still have a soul. It's good to know.
yeah, redheads. I don't know. I'm still on the fence, but
Oh, I'm on the fence.
Although wait,
This
I
is-
didn't
I had a
have
whole
soul to
show
start.
prepped. I planned to talk to you for 15 minutes, but I find it fascinating, and it's not often we have someone who's so familiar with this field sitting in here with us. And so I appreciate you coming in. And I told you, hey, dude, I'm going to pick your brain. And you were like, good, I'm going to fight you on the kid thing. It's like, no problem. That's fine. I'm open and willing to admit, you've made some very good points that I hadn't thought of. And I hope people got something out of it. I know it's not our typical show, but continued success. And we love you, brother.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Good luck with everything with the TBI, man. Blake
you.
TBI.
There you
As
go.
the shirt says.
Oh yeah, repping the squad.
All right, everybody. Thank you. We'll come back tomorrow and do something, do some sort of show, T and I. And I think Trav's coming by. He really wanted to hang with you. So I have a feeling you're taking off tomorrow early.
Jerk. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's bummed.
So I think he was going to the Pistons game tonight or something. So he had obligations. He wasn't able to come over tonight. But
Sucks.
yeah,
Jerk.
He still says you owe him a flight or something too. He's not happy. So
I owe myself a flight.
Yeah.
I don't have an airplane.
and me.
I did fly Delta. You're right.
Yeah.
First class.
I didn't fly in the back.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't fly in the back. So I'm going to admit this. I'm going to fully admit this. I had business to do here. However, I also needed 1,600 miles to upgrade to platinum. So
Oh, okay.
now
So it worked out.
it worked out.
Nice.
I may have jammed it in a week early.
Yeah.
To get it.
Hey, do what you got to do, man.
Play the game.
Yep.
Play on.
That's right. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks for hanging with us. We'll see you tomorrow.